The sky turned angry that evening, dark clouds rolling in over the peaceful countryside like a bad mood. Thunder, a beautiful spotted Appaloosa horse with a coat that shimmered between white and black dots, stood nervously in his paddock. At 7 years old, he was in his prime, strong, fast, and known throughout the county for his gentle soul and the ribbons he'd won at local shows. The ranch owner stepped onto his porch, coffee in hand, watching the storm approach. He'd owned Thunder since the horse was just a wobbly-legged colt, raising him from a nervous youngster to the confident animal that children could ride safely. "Better get inside, boy," he called out, but Thunder only snorted, pawing at the ground as lightning flashed in the distance. The owner should have brought Thunder into the barn right then. Later, he would replay this moment over and over, wishing he had acted sooner. But he thought there was time, just enough to finish his coffee before the storm hit in full force. He was wrong. The crack came suddenly, a sound like the world splitting open. Lightning struck an old oak tree near Thunder's paddock, sending a massive branch crashing down. The boom sent the horse into a panic. Thunder reared up, slipped in the mud that was quickly forming, and went down hard. When the owner rushed out minutes later, rain soaking through his shirt, he found a sight that made his heart sink. Thunder was trying to get up, front legs pushing desperately against the wet ground, but his back legs wouldn't move. They just lay there, useless, while fear blazed in the horse's dark eyes. "Easy, boy, easy," the owner said, his voice breaking as he knelt in the mud. He ran his hands along Thunder's back, feeling for injuries, finding nothing obvious but knowing something was terribly wrong. Thunder's breathing came fast and shallow, his nostrils flaring with each painful attempt to stand. It took 4 men to carefully move Thunder to the barn, sliding him onto a tarp and dragging him to shelter. The horse's eyes, usually bright and alert, now showed something worse than pain. They showed confusion, the terrible uncertainty of an animal that doesn't understand why its body won't obey anymore. The country vet arrived an hour later, her truck splashing through puddles left by the storm. She was a no-nonsense woman who had treated everything from birthing complications to barbed wire cuts on this ranch. But when she examined Thunder, her face grew serious in a way the owner had never seen before. "The fall damaged his spine," she explained, her fingers gently probing along Thunder's back while the horse lay on his side in the fresh straw. "See how he doesn't react when I touch his hindquarters? No feeling there at all. Can he recover?" the owner asked, though something in her expression had already answered his question. The vet sighed, standing up and wiping her hands on a towel. "I've seen injuries like this before in horses. They don't come back from this. Even if he could stand with support, the quality of life." She trailed off, looking at Thunder with sad eyes. "It would be kinder not to let him suffer." The words hung in the barn air, mixing with the smell of hay and the lingering ozone from the storm. Thunder nickered softly, as if he understood they were talking about him. The owner nodded slowly, his chest tight. "How long can we wait?" "I can come back next Tuesday," the vet said quietly. "That gives you a few days to say goodbye. I'm sorry." After she left, the owner sat beside Thunder in the straw, running his hand over the horse's strong neck, feeling the life still pulsing beneath the spotted coat. Thunder had carried laughing children on his back, had pulled Christmas sleighs through the snow, had been more than just an animal. He'd been part of the family. "What am I supposed to do, old friend?" he whispered, his voice echoing in the quiet barn. Thunder had no answer. Outside, the storm moved on, leaving behind a changed world neither of them was ready for. The ranch had visitors that Sunday afternoon. An old friend of the owner had brought her daughter to see the horses, not knowing about Thunder's accident. The little girl was small for her 6 years, with untidy braids and glasses that seemed too big for her face. She wasn't the kind of child who demanded attention. In fact, she was so quiet that adults sometimes forgot she was there. "You can go look at the horses in the front paddock," the ranch owner told her as he poured coffee for her mother at the kitchen table. "But stay away from the back barn, okay? We have a sick horse there." The girl nodded solemnly, but there was something in her eyes. A flicker of curiosity that the ranch owner missed as he turned back to his adult conversation. The two old friends sat talking about old times, about the weather, about anything except the stat decision looming on Tuesday. Neither noticed when the little girl slipped away from the porch where she'd been sitting, her small boots making no sound on the gravel path that led behind the house. She found Thunder by following the sounds of soft nickering. The back barn door was propped open to let in the fresh spring air, and inside, lying on a thick bed of straw, was the most beautiful horse the girl had ever seen. His coat was like a starry night, dark with splashes of white that reminded her of the sky she could see from her bedroom window. "Hello," she whispered, stopping at the stall door. Thunder's ears pricked forward at the sound of her voice. Since his fall 3 days earlier, people had spoken around him in low, sad voices or not at all. But the high, clear voice of the child was different. He raised his head slightly, nostrils flaring as he caught her scent. The girl looked both ways, making sure no grown-ups were coming, then carefully unlatched the stall door. She'd been around horses before. Her grandfather had taught her to always approach slowly to let them know you were there. "Are you sick?" she asked, kneeling in the straw just out of reach. "My mom says I was sick once too. I had to stay in bed for a very long time." Thunder watched her with intelligent eyes. The girl inched closer until she could touch his neck. His coat felt warm under her small fingers. "I got better though," she continued, her voice matter of fact. "The doctors said I might not, but I did." She began to stroke his neck in a gentle rhythm. Thunder closed his eyes, his breathing deepening into something calmer than it had been since the accident. The child didn't seem to notice or care that his back legs lay uselessly behind him. She just kept talking in that quiet voice, telling him about her school, about the cat she had at home, about how the other kids sometimes teased her for being so small. After a while, she sat down cross-legged in the straw and pulled a small book from her pocket. "Do you want me to read to you? My grandpa says animals like stories too." Without waiting for an answer, she opened to a dog-eared page and began to read aloud, stumbling over the bigger words but pushing through with determination. Thunder's ears stayed focused on her, and something that might have been contentment settled over him. That's how they were found 20 minutes later, the tiny girl reading aloud from her favorite book and the massive horse with his head now resting in her lap. "What are you doing?" the ranch owner exclaimed when he discovered them. "I told you not to come back here." Fear made his voice sharper than he intended, and the girl flinched. "He was lonely," she said simply, not moving from her spot. The ranch owner opened his mouth to scold her further, but the words died in his throat. For the first time since the accident, Thunder looked peaceful. The constant tension in his muscles had eased, and his eyes had lost that wild, frightened look. The girl's mother appeared behind him, out of breath from searching. "I'm so sorry, she wanders off sometimes." "No, it's okay," the ranch owner interrupted, his voice softening as he watched Thunder nuzzle the child's hand. I think he likes her." The girl looked up, her expression serious. What happened to his legs? Why can't he get up? The adults exchanged glances, unsure how to explain. Finally, the ranch owner knelt down to her level. "He had an accident. He hurt his back, and the vet says he won't be able to walk again." The girl frowned, her small forehead wrinkling in thought. "So what's going to happen to him?" A painful silence fell, broken only by Thunder's soft breathing. The ranch owner couldn't bring himself to say the words, not to this solemn-eyed child who had somehow connected with his horse. But something in his face must have given it away. The girl's eyes widened behind her glasses, and she wrapped her arms protectively around Thunder's neck. "No," she said firmly, with all the fierce certainty that only children possess. "He's not done yet." That night, the little girl couldn't sleep. She lay in bed staring at her glow-in-the-dark stars, thinking about the spotted horse with the sad eyes. Her mother had explained in the car ride home that sometimes animals got too sick or hurt to get better, just like people sometimes did. But the girl didn't believe Thunder was one of those cases. She couldn't explain how she knew, she just did. At breakfast the next morning, she pushed her cereal around the bowl instead of eating it. Her mother noticed right away. "What's wrong, sweetie? You're usually hungry in the morning." The girl looked up, her expression unusually serious for a 6-year-old. "Are they really going to put Thunder to sleep tomorrow?" Her mother sighed, setting down her coffee mug. "I'm afraid so. The ranch owner is very sad about it, but he doesn't want Thunder to suffer." "But Thunder's not suffering when I'm with him," the girl insisted, sitting up straighter. "He liked when I read to him. I could tell." "I know you connected with him, honey, but please, can we help him? Tears welled up in the girl's eyes, but these weren't the typical tears of a child who wanted a toy or treat. There was something deeper there, a genuine concern that surprised her mother. "Remember when the doctors said I might not walk again after I was sick? But you didn't give up on me." Her mother went very still. 2 years ago, her daughter had battled a rare illness that had temporarily paralyzed her legs. The doctors had been pessimistic about her chances of walking normally again, but through intensive physical therapy and her mother's dedicated home exercises, the girl had proven them wrong. "That was different," her mother said slowly, but a thoughtful look crossed her face. As a physical therapist who specialized in rehabilitation, she had seen hopeless cases turn around before. Not always, but sometimes. "We have to try," the girl pleaded. "Please, Mom," I promised him. "You promised him?" The girl nodded solemnly. "When I was reading to him, I whispered it in his ear when you weren't looking. I promised I wouldn't let them give up on him." Her mother took a deep breath. What her daughter was asking seemed impossible. Horses with spinal injuries were almost always euthanized. But there was something about the way the horse had responded to her child, something she hadn't seen before. "Let me make a phone call," she finally said. An hour later, they were bumping down the gravel driveway to the ranch. The ranch owner looked surprised to see them again so soon, especially on a Monday morning. "We need to talk about Thunder," the girl's mother said, with a confidence in her voice that made the ranch owner raise his eyebrows. They sat at the kitchen table while the girl went straight to the barn, allowed this time with a reluctant nod from the ranch owner. Through the kitchen window, they could see her small figure crossing the yard, moving with purpose toward the back barn. "I know what you're going to say," the ranch owner started, but the vet was very clear. "There's no hope for recovery. Tomorrow is the kindest option." "I understand that's what most vets would say," the mother replied. "But I've spent the last 15 years helping people recover from injuries doctors said were permanent." She took out a folder from her bag. "These are cases I've worked on, patients who were told they'd never walk again." The ranch owner glanced at the photos and medical reports, then shook his head. "People aren't horses. The basic principles are the same. Nerves, muscles, rehabilitation. And from what I saw yesterday," she paused, choosing her words carefully, "that connection between Thunder and my daughter is real. Sometimes the will to recover is just as important as the physical therapy." "So what are you suggesting?" The ranch owner's voice was skeptical, but there was a hint of something else there too, a desperate hope he was trying to suppress. "Give us 2 weeks," she said. "Let me try some modified therapy techniques with Thunder. If there's no improvement by then, you can make your decision. But if there is even the smallest sign of progress..." The ranch owner stayed out the window. In the distance, they could see the girl sitting in the straw beside Thunder, her small hand stroking his neck, her mouth moving as she talked to him. "The vet's coming at noon tomorrow," he said gruffly. "Call and reschedule," the mother pressed. "What do you have to lose by trying? 2 weeks, that's all we're asking." The ranch owner was quiet for a long moment, watching the unlikely pair in the barn, the enormous spotted horse and the tiny girl who somehow brought him comfort. 2 weeks, he finally agreed, his voice rough with emotion, starting now. The first day of Thunder's rehabilitation began early. The little girl arrived at the ranch before school, her backpack stuffed with books to read to the horse later. Her mother followed with a car full of equipment that made the ranch owner scratch his head. "What in the world is all this?" he asked, helping unload strange-looking padded rollers and elastic bands. "Tools we use for human patients," the mother explained. "I've been up all night modifying my approach for a horse." She pulled out a sketch pad with drawings of a sling system. "This is what we need to build first, something to help support Thunder's weight so his legs can remember what it feels like to stand." By mid-morning, the ranch owner had called in favors from neighbors. A local builder arrived with lumber and tools. A retired cowboy who'd worked with injured horses for 40 years showed up uninvited after hearing about the crazy plan through the rural grapevine. Even the local feed store owner came by, bringing special supplements that might help with nerve healing. "Never seen anything like this," the old cowboy muttered, watching as they constructed a frame above Thunder's stall. "Most folks we've given up by now." "Most folks don't have my daughter making promises to horses," the mother replied with a small smile. The little girl had to go to school, but she extracted promises from everyone that nothing would happen to Thunder while she was gone. "I'll be back at 3:30, she announced solemnly. "He likes when I read to him around 4 o'clock. After she left, the adults worked tirelessly. By early afternoon, they had constructed a simple sling system that could be adjusted to support different amounts of Thunder's weight. The mother directed everything, applying what she knew about human rehabilitation to the much larger anatomy of the horse. "The principle is the same," she explained to the skeptical men. "We need to prevent muscle atrophy while we wait to see if nerve function returns. And even if it doesn't, keeping the muscles strong might help him adjust to whatever mobility he can manage." The first attempt to get Thunder into the sling was a tense affair. It took 6 people, moving with gentle care, to position the straps under his body. Thunder snorted nervously, his eyes rolling white at the edges, but he didn't fight them. The ranch owner wondered if the horse somehow understood they were trying to help. When they finally activated the pulley system and Thunder felt the straps take his weight, he panicked for a moment, legs scrambling uselessly, breath coming in short bursts. The ranch owner nearly called the whole thing off. "Wait," the mother said, holding up her hand. "Give him a minute to adjust." Gradually, Thunder calmed down. His front legs, still strong and functional, took some of his weight while the sling supported his hindquarters. For the first time since his accident, he was almost standing. "Well, I'll be," the old cowboy whispered. They kept him up for just 5 minutes that first time, then carefully lowered him back to the straw. The mother checked his legs, looking for signs of circulation problems or stress. "We'll do this 3 times today, 5 minutes each. Tomorrow, we'll try for 10 minutes each session," she said with the confidence of someone who had walked this road before. "And we need to start massage therapy to prevent bed sores and keep blood flowing to his muscles." The ranch owner watched in amazement as she demonstrated, her hands working with gentle pressure along Thunder's paralyzed limbs. "Can you really fix him?" he asked quietly. The mother hesitated. "I don't know. Spinal injuries are complicated. But I've seen patients with similar injuries regain some function, not always perfect, but enough for a good quality of life." Just then, they heard the crunch of tires on gravel. The little girl came running into the barn, still wearing her school backpack. "Did you do it? Did he stand up?" she asked breathlessly. "Come see for yourself," her mother said. "We're about to put him in the sling again." The girl's face lit up as they activated the pulley system. Thunder seemed calmer this time, as if he remembered the process. But the real surprise came when the little girl walked into his line of sight. The horse nickered softly, ears pricking forward, and made a small effort to move toward her, including the faintest push from one hind leg. Everyone in the barn froze, staring at that leg. "Did you see that?" the ranch owner whispered. The mother nodded, her professional composure breaking into a smile. "I saw it. It might just be a reflex, but—" "It's a start," the old cowboy finished. The little girl didn't seem surprised at all. She stepped forward, reaching up to stroke Thunder's nose. "I told you," she said to the horse, not to the adults. "I told you we wouldn't give up." Days turned into a week, and the routine at the ranch settled into a rhythm around Thunder's rehabilitation. Each morning before school, the little girl would arrive to help with Thunder's first session of the day. Her small hands would stroke his neck while the adults worked the pulley system and adjusted the sling. In the afternoons, she would sit in the straw reading stories aloud, her high voice filling the barn with tales of adventure and courage. The mother worked tirelessly, applying everything she knew about rehabilitation. She created a chart that hung on Thunder's stall, tracking every tiny sign of progress. Most days, there wasn't much to write down. The slight movement they'd seen that first day didn't immediately lead to more. But she remained patient, explaining to the increasingly frustrated ranch owner that healing took time. "The nerves are like telephone wires," she told him, sketching on a pad to help him understand. "When they get damaged, the messages from the brain get scrambled or stopped completely. Sometimes the wires can repair themselves, but it happens slowly, like one tiny thread at a time." 10 days into their 2-week trial, there was a small breakthrough. During Thunder's water therapy session, where they used the sling to partially submerge his hindquarters in a small pond on the property, the ranch owner noticed a definite twitch in the horse's right hind leg. "There, did you see it?" he called out excitedly. The mother nodded, trying to keep her professional calm. The water makes it easier for him to attempt movement. The buoyancy helps support his weight. Everyone's spirits lifted that evening. The ranch owner even brought out an old bottle of whiskey he'd been saving, pouring small glasses for the adults who had gathered to help with Thunder's evening session. The little girl got a special cup of hot chocolate with extra marshmallows, which she sipped importantly, while the grown-ups talked about nerve regeneration and muscle therapy. But the next morning, disaster struck. The ranch owner found Thunder lying awkwardly in his stall, his breathing labored and his skin hot to the touch. The sling had caused pressure sores that no one had noticed developing, and now infection had set in. His temperature was dangerously high. The vet was called immediately. Her face was grim as she examined the horse. "This is why these cases are so difficult," she said quietly to the ranch owner, stepping outside the stall so the little girl couldn't hear. "Bedridden patients develop complications. The infection is serious. Even if we get it under control, we're facing weeks of additional care, and the chances of meaningful recovery are still minimal." The ranch owner looked through the barn door at the little girl, who was stroking Thunder's neck and whispering in his ear. His heart sank. "So we're back where we started." "I'm afraid so," the vet replied. "Sometimes the kindest thing is to know when to let go." The mother overheard the conversation as she approached with fresh bandages. "What's happening?" When they explained, she bit her lip, her professional optimism finally wavering. "The infection does change things," she admitted. "I've seen patients take dramatic turns for the worse with these complications." The ranch owner nodded heavily. "I think we need to consider what's best for Thunder now, not what we hope might happen." They agreed to wait until the following morning to make a final decision. The vet left antibiotics and instructions for keeping Thunder comfortable through the night. No one had the heart to tell the little girl. She continued her evening routine, reading to Thunder from her favorite book, completely unaware of the adults' conversation. As night fell, the ranch owner prepared to lock up the barn. "Time to go home," he told the girl gently. "We'll see Thunder in the morning." To everyone's surprise, the little girl shook her head. "I want to stay with him tonight." "That's not possible," her mother began. "Please," the girl said, her voice small but determined. "He's scared." "I can tell. And when I was sick in the hospital, I was scared at night too, until you stayed with me." The adults exchanged looks. After a quiet conversation, they agreed to an unprecedented arrangement. The mother would stay in the farmhouse guest room, and the little girl could sleep on a cot in the barn, just outside Thunder's stall, with regular check-ins throughout the night. As the ranch owner made his final rounds at midnight, he paused at the barn door. Inside, he could hear a small voice singing softly in the darkness, a simple lullaby about stars and dreams and tomorrow. Beside the singing, he could hear Thunder's breathing, which seemed less labored than before. The ranch owner stood listening for a long moment, torn between hope and heartbreak, wondering which would greet them in the morning. Dawn broke with a gentle pink light streaming through the barn windows. The ranch owner arrived early, coffee in hand, dreading what he might find. He barely slept, his mind filled with difficult decisions and the weight of responsibility for Thunder's suffering. What he found stopped him in his tracks. The little girl was awake, sitting cross-legged in the straw beside Thunder. The horse's head rested near her knee as she gently stroked his forehead. But it was Thunder's eyes that caught the ranch owner's attention. They were clear and alert, not glazed with fever as they had been the night before. "His fever broke around 3 in the morning," the girl announced without looking up. "I felt his face get cooler, just like Mom checks my forehead when I'm sick." The ranch owner set down his coffee and knelt beside Thunder, placing a cautious hand on the horse's neck. The skin was cool and dry, not burning hot as it had been yesterday. That's good," he stammered, hardly daring to hope. The mother appeared at the barn door, hair tousled from sleeping in the guest room. "How is he?" "His fever's gone," the ranch owner said, still surprised by the sudden improvement. The vet arrived an hour later, expecting to perform euthanasia. Instead, she found herself examining a horse whose condition had improved dramatically overnight. The infection hadn't disappeared, but Thunder's strong immune response had kicked in, helped by the antibiotics. "I can't explain it," she admitted, checking his temperature again, as if her thermometer might be broken. "Sometimes they rally, but usually not this quickly." She sang to him all night, the ranch owner said quietly, nodding toward the little girl who was now dozing on her cot, exhausted from her night watch. I checked in every 2 hours, and every time she was awake, singing or talking to him. The vet shook her head, smiling slightly. Well, medicine has its limits. Sometimes other things make a difference too. With the crisis past, they returned to the rehabilitation schedule with renewed energy. The infection had been a setback, but Thunder's surprising recovery gave everyone fresh hope. The mother adjusted the sling to prevent further pressure sores, adding extra padding and changing Thunder's position more frequently. 3 months passed, and summer spread across the countryside. The little girl, now on school vacation, spent nearly every day at the ranch. She had become an essential part of Thunder's therapy team, helping with exercises and massages, always talking to him in that clear, confident voice that seemed to reach something deep inside the injured horse. Progress was painfully slow but undeniable. The twitch in Thunder's right hind leg had developed into occasional deliberate movements. The left leg showed less improvement, but even there, the muscles had maintained some tone thanks to the daily therapy. "We need to try something new," the mother said one warm afternoon as they worked with Thunder in his sling. "I think he's ready for more weight-bearing exercises." She explained her plan to the ranch owner. They would adjust the sling to provide less support, forcing Thunder to try supporting more of his own weight. It was risky. Too much too soon could cause injury, but staying at the current level might not push his progress forward. "Let's try," the ranch owner agreed. After all these months of work, he trusted her judgment completely. They set up the exercise for the following morning. The little girl arrived wearing a special t-shirt she had decorated herself with painted handprints and the words "Thunder's Team" across the front. She carried a small bag of carrot pieces, Thunder's favorite treat. "Remember how we practiced yesterday?" the mother asked her daughter as they prepared Thunder in the modified sling. "You're going to stand right there with the carrot, and we'll see if he'll try to move towards you." The little girl nodded solemnly, taking her position about 3 feet in front of Thunder. The adults adjusted the sling, gradually reducing the support until Thunder was bearing more of his own weight than ever before. His front legs were steady, but his hindquarters trembled with the effort. "Just hold still now," the mother instructed her daughter. "Let him decide." Thunder's ears pricked forward at the sight of the carrot. He nickered softly, his eyes focused on the treat. The barn went completely silent as everyone held their breath. And then it happened. Thunder shifted his weight and took a deliberate wobbly step forward with his right hind leg. The movement wasn't smooth or natural. It was awkward and struggling, the leg moving in a strange pattern that showed the nerve damage still affected him. But it was unmistakably a voluntary step. He did it. The ranch owner gasped, fumbling for his phone. "Someone record this." The little girl remained perfectly still, holding the carrot out, her eyes wide with wonder and joy. "One more step," she encouraged softly. "You can do one more." As if responding directly to her voice, Thunder gathered himself and took another halting step forward. Someone was crying. Maybe all of them were. The mother tried to maintain her professional composure, but couldn't stop the tears that spilled down her cheeks. The impossible had just happened before their eyes. "Good boy," the little girl whispered as Thunder finally reached her and took the carrot from her outstretched hand. "I knew you could do it." 1 year had passed since the night of the storm that changed Thunder's life. The ranch looked different now. A new sign hung at the entrance: Second Chance Ranch, Rehabilitation Center for Injured Horses. The back barn had been expanded, with special equipment and padded stalls designed for horses recovering from various injuries. On this particular sunny morning, the little girl, now 7 years old and missing her 2 front teeth, stood by the fence of a small paddock. She wore rubber boots that were still too big for her and clutched a bright red apple in her hand. "Come on, boy," she called out, her voice carrying across the ranch. From the shade of a nearby tree, a familiar spotted horse emerged. Thunder's walk was not perfect. His right hind leg moved with more strength than his left, which still dragged slightly, but he was walking on his own. No sling, no support system, just his own 4 legs carrying him forward. The ranch owner leaned against the barn door, watching the scene with a smile that still held traces of disbelief. Next to him stood the mother, clipboard in hand as always, taking notes on Thunder's gait. I still can't believe it sometimes, the ranch owner said quietly. A year ago, I was ready to. I know, the mother replied, not needing him to finish the sentence. But look at him now. Thunder reached the fence and gently took the apple from the little girl's outstretched hand. His coat shone in the morning sun, healthy and well-groomed. Though he would never again run at full speed or carry riders in shows, he moved with a dignity that seemed to come from having fought his way back from the edge. We have 3 new horses coming next week, the ranch owner said, checking his phone calendar. A jumper with tendon damage, a racehorse with a fractured leg, and an old pony with arthritis whose owners can't afford treatment. What had begun as one child's refusal to give up on a single horse had grown into something much bigger. News of Thunder's recovery had spread, first locally, then through veterinary circles, and finally through a viral video that had been watched millions of times online. People started reaching out, asking if the ranch could help their injured horses too. The mother had eventually quit her job at the human physical therapy clinic to work full-time at the ranch, adapting her techniques for horses and training others in her methods. Veterinary students now came to observe and learn, taking notes and asking questions about the specialized equipment and techniques. The documentary crew is coming back today, the ranch owner reminded her. They want to get final footage for their film. The little girl had heard them talking and came running over, Thunder following at his own careful pace behind her. Are they going to put us on TV again? She asked, her smile showing the gap where her teeth had been. Yes, but just remember to be yourself, her mother said, smoothing down the girl's always messy hair. Just talk to Thunder like you always do. The little girl nodded and turned back to the horse, who lowered his head to nudge her gently. The bond between them had only grown stronger over the months of recovery. Though many people had contributed to Thunder's rehabilitation, everyone knew that the unshakable faith of one small child had been the true turning point. Later that afternoon, the documentary crew filmed as Thunder demonstrated his walking ability around the paddock. They interviewed the vet who had originally recommended euthanasia and now used Thunder's case as an example in her talks to veterinary associations. They spoke with the ranch owner about the transformation of his property into a specialized rehabilitation center. But their favorite footage came unplanned when they caught the little girl sitting in the grass with Thunder, talking to him while she made a daisy chain to hang around his neck. Do you remember when you couldn't walk? They'd heard her ask him as their cameras rolled from a distance. I told you you'd get better, and you did. She paused, concentrating on linking the flowers together. Just like I did when I was sick. Sometimes the doctors don't know everything. Thunder lowered his large head, and the little girl wrapped her arms around his neck in a hug that seemed to contain all the simple wisdom of childhood, that love and belief can sometimes work miracles when all hope seems lost. As the sun began to set over the ranch, casting long shadows across the paddocks and barns, the little girl led Thunder back to his special stall. Other horses now occupied the surrounding spaces, all with their own stories, their own injuries, their own journeys of healing just beginning. On Thunder's stall door hung a simple wooden plaque. A visitor had made it after hearing his story, carving the words that had now become the motto of the ranch. Never sealed is the fate of one who finds a friend who believes.